Hello and welcome to Retail Management BUS302. This is our last week, week 8. Congratulations, you made it. This is video lecture number 3. And remember, this week we're just dealing with kind of these one-off areas, these topics that really wouldn't take up a whole week's of focus. So we're just doing a really quick touch on some of these topics to make sure that you're aware as you move into the retail management industry on some of these topics. For instance, the integrated marketing campaign or integrated marketing communication plan, the IMC, right? That is, you're going to really know more about that and learn more about that in a marketing class, but it is an important part of retail management. So we talk about it here quickly. Another thing that you're going to pick up in other courses is HR. You're going to learn a little bit more about HR and HR classes and things, but we do need to talk about HR in the retail management class, because part of what you're going to do as a retail manager is try and acquire and retain people, individuals, right? So this whole process of recruiting, training, motivating, evaluating, right? You're going to have to know how to go through that process and be aware of it to be a good retail manager, right? So one of the first things that you want to do if you're going to be in this area and you're going to be recruiting people, is develop a job description, right? Find out what that employee is going to do. Be very detailed. You'll have to locate prospective employees. You'll have to screen them. You'll generally do that with application forms. You're going to check references. You'll interview them. Look at their social media platforms, right? You want to make sure you get the right person for the right job. You may be able to test applicants, but you want to check with your state, because it could be illegal on some things. So make sure that this is kind of right. So know that might be something you might do, might not do. Do what you can to when you interview people, to preview the job, right? Tell them what they're going to be encountering, right? Go through a personal interview, and behavioral interviews work really well for retail. Ask candidates how they handled situations in the past. Say, tell me about a time when you did this. And as you go through the interview, you do need to be careful, because there are a lot of questions that you cannot ask, right? For the employment guidelines, like, do you have plans for having children, a family, marriage plans? What about your husband, wife? What do they do? You can't ask. These are things you cannot ask. Okay. Now, the other piece is, a lot of the interviews we're doing today are being done on things like Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Skype, so on. So it's not uncommon to do interviews like this. I've done quite a few that way over the last several years, where it's part of the whole process. But if you are going to have somebody face-to-face in a retail store environment, eventually you will want to have them at the store environment so that they can see things and everything else. Once again, these are questions that you should not ask. How would you feel about working for a person younger than you? Date of birth, how old? You can't ask these things. Just don't, right? Once you hire somebody, the next thing you want to do is you want to train and I love the word acculturate employees. You want to get them into your system, right? Having a structured training program really is ideal, because that way everybody's going to have the same basic skills. They're going to get the same knowledge, right? Doing things on the job, right? So working under a direct supervisor, that's important. Blending maybe a self-paced and on the job can help, right? And then if you have some employees that don't do well, look at ways that, ask yourself, okay, what did we do that didn't work? What worked really well, right? So analyze the success and failures of your training program, but also you need to, as a manager, recognize that your employees, as they go through this, they're going to be making mistakes. So watch and be helpful to them, and then analyze, okay, how did we miss that? And, was this a training? So you got to be thinking about this as you go through. All right. Another important thing is motivating employees, making sure that they have a task that challenges them, right? Motivating is more than just paying them, right? So we do need to have basic living wages, but beyond, once we reach that, what people need, right? More people are going to be motivated by an opportunity to belong to something, to do something that's meaningful, if they feel appreciated. So saying thank you, right? So as you motivate people, this can be really challenging things, but it's so important because sometimes we just forget to say thank you and realize what people really need. So getting to know individuals and see that. Now, again, compensation, there's only so much you can do there, but make sure that you're paying a living wage is the starting point generally. With that, that's an important place to be, right? Beyond that, let's see here. You will need to evaluate your employees. And as you evaluate them, I think I missed as we evaluate them, so this is part of motivation, understanding that you are going to need to evaluate the employees. You're going to have to say, hey, this is going well. Normally you do this like at 30, 60, 90, and then a year. All right. So unfortunately, when you go through these evaluations, they're not always the most motivating things, right? So understanding the format, when it should be done, how it should be done, this is a really important piece in understanding how, as a manager, you should give feedback, right? So again, when you're looking to acquire and hire people, retain people, understanding what the importance is. So this could be part of the evaluation process and saying, hey, 50% of what you're going to do is related to customers and compliant, right? So you have some things there. And when you start going through this evaluating process, one of the things that managers sometimes do is they focus on one thing, like, oh, I saw you do this once, and then they focus the whole evaluation on that one item rather than being, hey, this is what's happened over the last 90 days. So the most recent events come up rather than, again, looking at the entire year. And then sometimes they don't, as managers, when you're doing an evaluation, you don't think about, hey, what's going on in the rest of the store and how might this influence this, employee at this time? So, as a manager, being a little bit more aware of bigger picture things is really important. Things that human resource managers like to measure: productivity. They also like to measure turnover, how many employees are leaving, and engagement. How's the commitment to the company? So this is something that an HR manager would probably use to evaluate a store manager as well. So now, again, I mentioned the rewarding, right? So where you have to pay. So you want to basically start looking and saying, okay, what's salary compensation programs, right? There's different ways to do this. If you're going to be paying people on on commission base, do you have a straight salary compensation, or do they have incentives, right, where they can get a little commission? Can they draw early? Do they have quotas to meet? So explaining this to the employee and knowing what this is really key, because if an employee doesn't understand how they're getting compensated, they're not going to be happy. So knowing how this works and being able to explain is really important. At the very basic, though, you should be paying your employees a living wage. That is the key. You gotta pay them a living wage. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to engage and give you their best. Now, the intrinsic awards, this is really what which keeps people engaged and help people stay longer, is when they find enrichment and they find their job rewarding and fun. So whatever you can do to motivate from an intrinsic point of view, where they're saying, hey, I'm really committed to this. I'm connected to meaningful work. I know where I'm going. These are things that are going to really benefit you and help you as a leader and a manager do more for your employees and really help retain some great people and develop them as well. As far as leadership styles, again, this is something you're going to pick up on in other classes. There's definitely different leadership styles out there. There's the autocratic leader, hey, do this; democratic leader, where you take a vote; transformational leaders, right, that are there for change. And servant leaders, those that are there to serve the people and put the needs of their employees and make sure that they get what they need. As a manager, you are going to use a lot of different leadership styles throughout. You'll need to practice. There'll be times that you might need to be the autocratic. There are times you might need to be a servant, right? So you're going to have to practice a lot of different leadership strategies as you go through. It's not, I can't say one works best in all situations. It does depend on the individual and the situation and the follower. So there's a lot of different things that go into that leadership strategy piece. And then part of that leadership strategy then is just, how do you maintain morale? So how do you improve the work atmosphere? So finding ways to connect people to meaningful work. That's probably the most important thing. Helping people feel appreciated and just taking time to get to know them is a huge benefit. I'm a big proponent of management by walking around, where you walk around, you get to know your employees, you get to see them, you connect with them where they're at. And so these are all things that you can incorporate. And again, as you go through this whole process of becoming a retail manager, you're going to learn and develop your own style so that you can be effective in your particular area and be able to integrate all these thoughts that we've been going through this entire course. With that, we've got one more video, lecture video number 4, and that's going to be coming up next.